Hey, we are at Genesis 15. This is titled The Lord's Covenant with Abram. We've seen God make these I will statements that have served as a very promising thing. He's actually been very faithful in that, but we've actually seen him make kind of a covenant with Noah before, and we've definitely seen him make these I will statements. I'm going to, and then it is. But it's interesting that this starts off with that heading there. At 15:1 it says, "Afterward the Lord spoke to Abram in a vision and said to him." So I want to point out, every other time we've had the Lord addressing someone directly in something, and we've seen that God can have these conversations with people, that a relationship with God is possible. And here we see the Lord speaking to Abram in a vision. So this is very interesting. I say interesting so much when I'm reading the Bible. He's speaking to Abram in a vision. And he said to him, "Do not be afraid, Abram, for I will protect you, and your reward will be great." So he starts this off in this vision. Don't be afraid. Okay, and he calls him by name, Abram, for I will protect you, and your reward will be great. Okay, so he's saying, don't be afraid, because I'm going to protect you, and your reward is going to be great, in case you were worried about your reward for whatever reason. Probably because he just turned down something. I don't know if you've ever turned down a blessing like Abram did at the end of Genesis 14, but sometimes you're like, I really should have taken that. I kind of need that money now or something. I don't know. But that's interesting. That's reading into something that's not necessarily there. Sorry. Verse 2, "But Abram replied, 'O sovereign Lord, what good are all your blessings when I don't even have a son?'" Uh-oh. He acknowledges God in all his authority and power and as a sovereign. But then he says basically, what good are all your blessings when I don't even have a son? So again, this is pointing back to God having said, hey, you're going to have more descendants than like specks of dust. You're not even going to be able to count them. And like this is Abram addressing that. So this isn't just an ungrateful Abram. This is him saying, like, I recognize you're in all power, but I don't see the good of these blessings, and I don't even have a son. Okay, you promised this. You said you would do this, and you're saying you will do these things, but I have not seen you actually do what you said you were going to do here. And this is a really, it seems like a very rebellious and ungrateful thing to say, but I want to say that that's the way that I'm taking that, of like, hey, you've been faithful in these things, you have been protecting me, but one of your big promises that you're going to establish a great nation through me, and that I'm going to have all these descendants, but I don't see that. So let's see how he continues. "Since I don't have a son, Eliezer of Damascus, a servant in my household, is going to inherit all my wealth." So again, Abram is projecting what's going to happen. He's saying, just like he said, yeah, they're going to see Sarai, and she's beautiful, and they're going to kill me so that they can have her. And in this case, he's saying, I don't have a son, and so, he's writing this story, so my servant Eliezer of Damascus, he's going to inherit all my wealth, not a son. Like he's writing this story. Notice, I like to point out those patterns when I see them. A servant in my household will inherit all my wealth. Not me, a servant in my household. So not a descendant, pointing that out. Verse 3, "You have given me no children, so one of my servants will have to be my heir." It's a bold thing to say to God, but he's calling it as he sees it. Now, our faith is not what we see, and I think this is interesting. Let's see how the Lord responds to that very bold statement. "Then the Lord said to him, 'No, your servant will not be your heir.'" Okay? He's saying, that's a story you're writing, chump. Let me tell you how it's going to be. It's not going to be like that. Your servant's not going to be your heir. For you will have a son of your own to inherit everything I am giving you. He's saying, I am giving you and you're going to have. Just because you haven't had it yet doesn't mean it's not going to happen. I'm telling you right now, you will have a son of your own to inherit everything that I am giving you, that I provide you with. You notice how I've been faithful and helped you with a victory, and I've come through in all these other areas? I just want to point that out, but I also want to point out just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. What you think is going to happen is not going to. I'm putting a lot of extra things in that, but again, this is how it speaks to me. And that's why I'm encouraging you to kind of leave your comments and stuff. This is the face value as I'm reading it, and I'm kind of taking into account of building on different things. Because, again, you see a pattern in Abram of looking at what he sees and then kind of writing a story, okay? And the last time he didn't address God with it, but this time he's directly addressing God, but he's doing it in an ungrateful and accusatory fashion of saying, well, what good is this? Because I don't have this. You're not being faithful like you said you would, right? And then God saying, no, right? I am blessing you, I'm going to bless you, and you are going to have your own son. And I think what you see is a pattern of God saying that he will, and that he is faithful, and that's why I'm pointing out these patterns, because that shows a character and a faithfulness, definitely of God, or the lack of faith in some of the people as they respond, or the great faith, and then what results as that, as a cycle, as a pattern, because I think that there are lots of patterns that keep popping up. But this helps us to notice God's character and how he responds to the character of others and of his children, whether they're being faithful or they're being unfaithful. So noticing those things, that's why I have those sides. So you will have a son of your own to inherit everything I am giving you. Continuing at verse 5, then the Lord brought Abram outside beneath the night sky and told him, look up into the heavens and count the stars if you can. Your descendants will be like that, too many to count. Okay, so again, he's saying, like, you're going to have so many descendants, you can't count them. They were like dust. You can't count the dust. Look up at the stars. All the stars that you see out here, like, you try to count them. You're going to have more descendants than that. It's too many to count. It's 6. And Abram believed the Lord. So all it took was God just reaffirming that. No, I'm going to do this. Just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean it won't. Okay? I still plan on doing this. I know you don't see it, but I'm telling you, I am. And this is what you need to look forward to. I want to put your eyes back on that. Not what you see, not what you think, but what I am and what I have said, and that I will be faithful. So God says, they're going to be too many to count. Abram believed the Lord, and the Lord declared him righteous because of his faith. So notice, Abram believed. All it took was God speaking that or reaffirming that. He believed, and that belief was enough that the Lord declares him righteous because of his faith. Not anything that he had done, but because of what he believed. God declares him righteous. Right with the Lord. That's big. Verse 7, then the Lord told him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of Chaldeans to give you this land. And this land, as we heard in these previous 2 chapters, like, that's everything that you can look around and see. I'm going to give this to you. I'm going to give this to your children. These descendants who are innumerable, but you can't count. Okay? And he like, re-emphasizes that I'm the one who brought you out of this. I'm the one who's provided this. I'm the one who's promised these things, okay? And it is to give you this land. Because I have named you, I've declared you righteous. This is so good, man. At verse 8, but Abram replied, O sovereign Lord, again, saying, I recognize your power. How can I be sure that you will give it to me? Okay? Now, he believed because of his faith. All right, he believes in the Lord, but he does ask this question. O sovereign Lord, how can I be sure that you will give this to me? And I think it's just important to note that someone who God has called righteous at the sight of the Lord because of his faith can still ask a question like that. So if you're beating yourself up for having those questions of, yeah, I trust you, but I really want to know how. How? Because I don't see it. Like, that's a human thing to do, and it's a natural thing that even someone who the God would call righteous, maybe that we would call a hero of the Bible so far as we've gone, that they have those same questions. So you're not alone in it. And I guess it's okay to ask God those things, but let's see how God responds. Then the Lord told him at verse 9, bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. Seems like an odd, that doesn't answer the question. Wait, you're going to bless me through these things? You're going to give me a son through these? That seems a little weird. What do these have to do with anything? Like, doesn't give the explanation, gives a very odd call. So this makes me think about the way that God was with Noah, where he's like, hey, I need you to build a boat. And then he kind of explains why, and then he follows through with these things. So good. Man, at 10, Abram took all these and killed them. So Abram follows this request. He kills them. He cut each one down the middle and laid the halves side by side. This seems very odd, but this is like a sacrificial practice here. He did not, however, divide the birds in half. Some vultures came down to eat the carcasses, but Abram chased them away. These are not for you. These are not for you. These lives were taken as a sacrifice to the Lord. These are the Lord's. So he's protecting even these dead things. He's chasing away these vultures, these creatures of death. Okay? Interesting. Chases them away. 12. That evening, as the sun was going down, so that shows that he was there for a little while, so much so that vultures are coming for these dead things, which they don't just, like, somebody doesn't just die, an animal doesn't just immediately die, and then, like, a vulture just, hey, oh, dead. Like, they don't just go to them. That signifies some time has passed. So there's this period of waiting. The reason I'm bringing that up is like, that tells me that there was a period of waiting where God told him, hey, give me these things, and then Abram answers that, and he takes it and he kills them, and then he's like protecting these carcasses for a little while. And then that evening, as the sun was going down, after these things have kind of baked a little bit in the sun, probably smelled wonderful, Abram fell into a deep sleep. He saw a terrifying vision of darkness and horror. So this is another vision. So it makes me wonder at this point, when God brought Abram out into the night sky, like to go and look at the night sky, not into the night sky, like if that wasn't a part of the vision, if that was just him like speaking to Abram. But how significant that is, I don't really know. But he's having this vision here, and we get caught in that, in this deep sleep. Verse 13, then the Lord told Abram, in this vision, right, you can be sure that your descendants will be strangers in a foreign land, and they will be oppressed as slaves for 400 years. This does not sound like a blessing, right? Because everything else has been like, I'm going to bless you, I'm going to bless you, I'm going to curse those that curse you. And then suddenly, like, this terrifying vision of darkness and horror, the Lord tells Abram, you can be sure your descendants will be strangers in a foreign land. They will be oppressed as slaves for 400 years. But, this is a big but, so Sir Mix-a-Lot's very happy about this, I think. Verse 14, so weird. Okay, but I will punish the nation that enslaves them, and in the end, they will come away with great wealth. So I think that what it seems to me that God's addressing here is like, I want you to know you are going to have these descendants. I am going to make this great nation. But I want you to know that sometimes things aren't going to look so great. 400 years of slavery in a foreign land, that doesn't sound so great. Okay, and it's not going to look great, and you're going to think that I'm not being faithful, and you're going to ask how, just like you're doing right now, because you don't see it before you that you have a son, or that you will have a son. You're going to have to trust me. God's saying, like, but you can trust me but I'm going to punish that nation that enslaves them, and in the end, they will come away with great wealth, okay? They will be blessed. There will be blessings through this. All right, verse 15, but you will die in peace at a ripe old age. He's saying, like, that's something that they have to worry about. You don't even have to worry about that. You are going to die in peace at a ripe old age. You're going to live a full life. Verse 16, after 4 generations of your descendants will return here. Sorry, after 4 generations, your descendants will return here to this land when the sin of the Amorites has run its course. this is big because he's giving kind of a timetable here. And he's given a very specific when the sin of the Amorites has run its course. So after 4 generations, so he's saying like time is going to pass here, and your descendants are going to return here to this land. But that's not going to happen until this. So he's foretelling a lot of things in this, and I want to take note of that. When the sin of the Amorites has run its course, we'll come back to that, because that gets us into a little bit of lineage that would make this go on for a very long time. Again, like I'll try to in the future have a chart that's kind of mapping that out, just to see how significant it might be. 17. As the sun went down and it became dark, all right, Abram saw a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch pass between the halves of the carcasses. So Abram saw a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch pass between the halves of the carcasses. So as the sun went down, it became dark. This makes me wonder if this is part of the vision, right? I would assume so, because this is a very supernatural, weird thing that is happening right here. At 18, so the Lord made a covenant with Abram that day and said, I have given this land to your descendants, all the way from the border of Egypt to the great Euphrates River, the land of the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites. So the Lord made a covenant with Abram that day and said, I have given this land to your descendants all the way, and then he names all those people and all this territory. Now what's weird as the standout here from a face value standpoint, not being able to look at other commentaries or necessarily having a knowledge of what that might symbolically be, because we can't read ahead on anything, and I'm trying not to look at any. There's no footnotes in here other than like a quick little thing where it might say in Hebrew, the river of Egypt, referring either to an eastern branch of the Nile River or to the brook of Egypt in the Sinai. Like those are the kind of footnotes I have. This isn't a commentary Bible or a life application Bible, and again, I'm trying to do it at face value, which means we can't really read into smoking fire pot and a flaming torch pass between the halves of the dead carcasses. We know that it's significant enough that it's mentioned here, but culturally, I don't know what that is. Just that's not something we have nowadays, a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch passing through the halves of these carcasses. So what are the carcasses? We know that the carcasses were an offering from Abram. We know that they were cut in half, except for these birds that he like shoot away, vultures and all that stuff. That some time has definitely passed, but then you see this weird vision. Abram saw this smoking fire pot and a flaming torch pass between the halves of the carcasses. So it passes between these things that were sacrificed. And immediately following that, so the Lord made a covenant with Abram that day. So is this significant that is kind of establishing the covenant, or saying that God, with a smoking fire pot and this flaming torch, you've got smoke and you've got fire, which I don't want to project into things that we haven't seen yet, but I think we'll just make the note that a smoking fire pot, smoke, and a flaming torch, fire, were going before and through these sacrifices, through this faithful action that Abram has taken, and that God made a covenant with Abram and declared, I have given this land. And notice, every other thing has said, I will, I will, I will. Your descendants will be this, just innumerable. They will be blessed. They will be a blessing to others. People who bless you will be blessed. People who curse you will be cursed. I've got your back. I am with you. I will, I will, I will. But this is a statement where God, in this covenant with Abram and with this vision, speaks to him and he says, I have given this land to your descendants. So that's very affirming, as God meets him, and then it helps Abram to believe, and then the Lord declares him righteous because of his faith, but he's still asking how. I think that this is a great example of God saying, let me tell you how. Because I've said. And when I say I will, I want you to know that that means I have. So that's my big takeaway from this chapter. That even when he asks how and he gets pressed, God is patient with him, and God gives him this call to action, which he answers faithfully, and then God rewards that by again continuing the cycle of encounter and of blessing and of clarity, where God basically establishes, I read, as, you want to know how? Because when I say I will, it means I have. So that's my big takeaway from Genesis 15. Hope you're enjoying this. Let me know what your takeaways are.